Hello.
I'll wait for another minute to give others a little bit more time to join us. Okay, I'll get started. So welcome everyone. Today is February 14th. This is the Database Scalability Working Group weekly sync up. So let's get started from the agenda. The first item is a significant update since last meeting. And I have the first item from a sharding group. So update from Dylan earlier last week that phase 3 was rolled out to staging. We are keeping the traffic at 50% like last time, since this is the best chance to catch any issues in the staging. So our CI raise are 50% from the CI cluster in staging. And also enabled the loose foreign key fair queuing feature flag last week as well. And also the readiness probe for the phase 4 and 6 that the task is run a truly decompose the pipeline across two databases. As the last reported, we have only 3 issues left from it, and the remaining work is mostly feature flag to disable. And Camille, you want to verbalize your comment here?
Nothing in particular. The phase 6 main, I guess, one of the last outstanding bigger issues is like work on the support of selective running of the migration, but this is also progressing well. And I don't anticipate any slowdowns on that one for the phase 6. So I think in summary, what you are saying, like we are progressing, we are at pretty good state with the phase 4 and effectively phase 6 finishing from the development side.
Yeah, thank you for the update, Camille. And moving to next one, we are preparing phase 4 feature flag rollout in that merge request. It's also going well. And a summary of what has been done last week. So we closed the 7 issues, and also our development progress is very steady, and we continue to see the open issues trending down. So that's the update from the sharding group. Any questions? Okay, moving on to the next one. Sam, since you're here, do you have any update for the ops side?
No, I don't. I think it's still on track, although I was reading down below in the agenda. I was curious about your note, I guess in 4A, but no, I think it's on track. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And Steve is not here, so I'll have to sync up later with Steve. And then moving on to the next one, review the rollout process. So Dylan actually brought this up, that the CI cluster in production right now is projecting to be available February 25th. That's the best effort. So what that means is this is 2 weeks behind our scheduled timeline. So this could result in a overall timeline push out to the May 22nd. So I had a question for Steve or Ken. So just to confirm, what's the latest date? Because we had a meeting last week. We synced on that. Infrastructure team is working on it still. Just to confirm the date, and then also get a confidence level from that. Since Steve is not here, I will follow up offline with Steve. Any questions about this update? Okay.
Is this the 2-week delay that you mentioned in 4?
Yes, that's a 2.
I think the numbering
2A.
changed.
Yeah, number change. Yeah, 2A actually. Yes. So okay, I'll sync up later offline with Steve. Any other updates about this rollout progress or questions about this? Okay, then the bullet number 3, I captured the charts from the Science dashboard, and you can see the first chart, our outstanding issues, the green line keeps dropping. So that's our development overall work is progressing very well. And the risks, of course, mentioned that the 2-week delay in the 2.8 will follow up. And then timeline review, that's pretty much done. And then moving on to other topics. So the new topic here is engineering allocation is evolving to engineering allocation 2, which actually will capture the long-term architectural work, and decomposition was selected as a for the first iteration, along with rate limiting. So Sam knows about that. And a couple changes here. New labels will be introduced. So for decomposition, there will be a new label called Eng allocation functional decom. And then a new Science dashboard was also added for visibility. So Dylan's question here, just to verbalize quickly, does this mean that issues created or prioritized by PM don't need this label? And yeah, and basically there were already a lot of labels for decomposition. This will add another one to the play. So it's how, yeah, basically that's a question, how this will impact our efficiency or our progress. So Mac, I see you have a comment here. Would you like to work?
Yes. So first off, these 2 groups are the first early adopters of engineering allocations. So thank you for all your patience as we are still navigating how to best fit these 2 work streams into the process. I understand that because we are picking on something that's been in process for a while, the labels and the work streams don't map one-to-one, and that's okay, because engineering allocation dashboards are long-term architectural rework that we want to capture and think from now till like 1 year plus, 2 year plus time horizon, as Eric used the term. Right now, it's reliability and a bit of a wartime. This is the dashboard for peacetime, when things have settled. We want to capture only the long-term re-architecture work, and we want to focus on just these 2 items for now, which is functional decomposition and then rate limiting. So I'm going to skip to point 4, then I'll provide space for Sam as well. As I mentioned before, this is meant to be scalable to the future. When an initiative like this comes up, it's not just development. It may also involve infrastructure, quality, and development, or sometimes support. So we're testing out this framework that's linked in the issue above. The team can use existing labels. So my top goal is to not change anything that's working. People, no workflow changes, no process changes, no label changes at all. I'm working with Shun on identifying how many labels are capturing functional decomposition as a work stream. And then we can apply the automation, the triage to capture that to start. And then when we have the dashboards up, you can filter by, you should have a top-down visibility. Okay, this initiative, how many teams in development, how many teams in quality, how many teams in infrastructure are actually working on this functional decomposition, and then providing a simple burn down chart. It can exist in parallel with whatever charts that is already working at this point. We do want to start capturing this into this dashboard to test it out. And I anticipate there will be changes and fine tuning. So this is not the end state, but more of a heads up that we're going to include this into the future state of engineering allocations. And then any questions before I pass it to Sam for Roman number 3.2?
Yeah, thank you, Mac. Yeah, Sammy, you want to verbalize your comment here?
Yeah, and just that also thanks Mac for setting up all these dashboards. I know, and team for setting up all these dashboards, because it is, I think, going to really help track some of these, things going forward. And yeah, my plan was to kind of this week start looking at automation around some of these labels, because I think at least in rate limiting, the way I'm thinking of it now is like we have an existing label, we could kind of automatically apply this for certain types of tracking. And there's kind of other things I'd like to do in terms of reminding people to do certain things at certain times. So probably makes sense. Yeah, we could like team up on that, John, if you're interested.
Yeah, cool. Let's sync up offline. And also, I took a look at our backlog, so it won't be hard to pull out the decomposition issues, development issues, but there could be some tricks there to pull out the infrastructure issues. They're not specific. Many of those tasks are not specifically labeled to decomposition, but they are actually. So I'll sync up with Jose offline to see how we can pull out those issues for automation.
Okay. So Sean and Sam, can I facilitate with an issue in the engineer analytics team, and then we can capture whatever labels you want to map there, and then either someone on our team can go and implement some sort of automation. But we want to document it, and if there's things that are common, that's going to set up for like what is the third initiative that is going to be included. We're setting up the standards going forward, and then on what to decide to be included.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to open like an issue for me and Chum, but yeah, if you wanted to just go and open one in the right project where we get to that, then yeah, that sounds like the next step. So
let me go ahead and create it. I'll tag both of you to get the requirements, and you can the drive from top down.
Add on. Yeah,
Awesome.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions about this engineer allocation tool?
Is there anything more I can help provide clarity on for the team members? I know not everyone is joining this working group. Anything I need to copy over to the other agenda, please let me know. I'm happy to multimodal communicate to everyone. Everyone understands the reason why, the path forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Mac, for the. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So, Meg, if I'm reading your comment correctly, are we saying that I can now go back to the architecture evolution workflow and say, the outcome of that is you hook it into engineering allocation to get people and assigned to these things?
Yes.
Because right now the architecture evolution is very ad hoc about that, right? You get a manager, you get a senior technical lead, and then we talk to some VP, and then you kind of put it together. But I mean, I love this idea, and I'm fully on. I just want to make sure that I can go and write up an MR and say, connect these two things together, and you get.
Short answer, yes. When I was talking with Eric, Steve, and Christopher, this should be something that has a conversation at the top level. Okay, this one should be an engineering allocation that we added in. But if it's long-term architectural rework, yes, this is the goal. Why don't I set up a coffee chat with you, Jerry? We have dashboards that can show what the next state is, and the goal is when you're tracking something like this, you should be able to filter down. Okay, how many teams in engineering that's in development, quality, infrastructure are working on this long-term architecture initiative? And that's probably what you want to be tracking at. And then I'll reach out to set up a demo. I've been doing
awesome.
rounds. Yeah, I'll reach out.
Mike, can you invite me as well, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, looks like we are the last question for this one. Okay, moving on to the next one. Actually, from Sam, do you want to verbalize?
Yeah, I was curious, it came up this week, but I was curious with the work that we're doing to set up a separate database cluster for CI, kind of how close that gets us to being able to do that for other purposes if we wanted to. For example, like if a new feature was developed, that there was a reason that you would want to keep it outside of the primary database. Does the tooling, like how close are we to that? Yeah, to being able to run in clusters versus just two.
Actually, there is CI, there is registry, there is the main database. We're already doing that. So the biggest quote unquote blocker you need to conquer there is to convince Sid and one of either Stan or myself that you do really need a separate data store. Early on, there are other ways we can do it. We can set up a logical database inside the main cluster if the usage is going to be low enough that it's not going to hit us hard in production. One CI is actually working on outside of the main database. That'll give us more room. So that's the biggest thing, but we're already supporting multiple clusters. So operationally speaking, I think we're fine. But Sid has always had a reticence to have, a mushroom cloud of data stores. So he set up some bridges or some gates for that to happen.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, thank you. That helps a lot because I guess you're right. We actually do that already.
Yeah.
And yeah,
also,
sorry, go ahead.
I forget her name. Let me just make sure I'm getting it right. Monray, I think it is.
Crystal or Alana, which role?
You're
For
right,
like
it's Monray.
Yeah, Monray is now asking for that. And so I'm meeting with her to understand why they feel they need a separate data store. Their case actually seems to make a lot of sense because they're consuming data, but they're writing all these very different data. And then we're trying to understand how busy is this going to be? Do we just start you on the main database in a separate logical database, and then we move you to a separate cluster and all that? So at some point, I need to write an MR that actually, right now we've documented that there is this gate, but we now have several use cases where we can start documenting what the process looks like in terms of first thing we'll likely do if you do not fit in the main database is we'll create your logical database. And from there, we use smaller size hardware and then just, scale you up as we go.
So I added a link, Sam, in the agenda for the process for proposing a separate database. It's in the handbook. And the way I took your question under bullet point B is you're questioning, does the work that we're doing for decomposition provide tooling to allow us to separate some other area of functionality into a separate database? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, it's really related to what Jerry was talking about. I mean, it's kind of a general question, but the thing that triggered it is that we've got an error reporting feature, which was kind of shadow launched at DZ. It was the last project he worked on before he moved on from the company. And right now it writes all of the error data just into the primary database, which has caused some production incidents. And
right.
by
okay.
prior knowledge of like error reporting software, you can get the data volume can get very large very quickly when you're storing like, JavaScript errors, things like that. And so there's a concern that that's kind of a ticking time bomb. We're putting various limits in place to kind of make sure that you can't use it, as a full, you can't store that much in it. But, the probably longer term strategy would be to build it on top of like ClickOut, like one of the observability stores that team's working on. The shorter term, it was really easy. Maybe it makes sense to pull it into a separate database, but that's kind of a lot of work. It doesn't seem like long term that's the ideal data store, even if it's isolated.
Agreed. Yeah, that sounds like an ideal scenario for separate database storage, and for new features, you would have to go through that proposal for separate database. I thought you were asking something different, like can we carve out yet another feature to a separate database? And the answer to that is
an interesting use case too, because I imagine if we do it once, we might want to do it again. But
there's probably some knowledge gain, but most of this is specific to extracting CI out into its own database. So not a ton, but non-zero. That's a wide range, and that's probably not helpful. But we couldn't just say, okay, now we want to separate this feature off into its own database.
The cluster management is kind of already in place, so like we can. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
So like from the development side, it's doable, but there is like the challenge on understanding if we will not end up with too much granularity on having too many small databases, especially Sam, in your case, I think you also have packages features that are mostly a kind of sort of CDN, so mostly reads that also probably generates some amount of pressure. So I think like what you may look at that set of the features holistically. If there is like enough, I mean, content that would really justify another database, because there is also discussion of pods, and pods idea is technically make each instance small enough that you don't really need that many databases and you can deal with the load. So technically, we actually have probably like 3 paths today. First one is like partitioning to spread the load a little. Second path is really decomposition, where if we have enough data, it may justify the infrastructure overhead to provision another database. What we do as part of the decomposition, we definitely make it simpler, but it's still like quite amount of the work, because you kind of have to reinvent what we've been doing now, but it should be half easier right now. But the third path is really like the pods. Just make each pod small enough that this is not really your concern, and you don't really need that. We don't really need that many small databases. So I think there is like some balancing act between these 3 initiatives now.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think that with observability data, one thing I'd point out is it can get very large. So that's probably another axis that we could look at, is like if the, volume like one customer can generate is like on the order of like all the data that we have today. Like there's that's kind of what I'd be most worried about with errors, is just that you can get into very trillions of records very quickly without even a lot of users.
Yes, but this is also then like connected with the retention policy, and I know that we also talk about the timescale databases in the past. So
Yeah,
our decomposition effort maybe could be really focused on introducing a third database that is truly like timescale DB that we may use to these various usage patterns, instead of introducing generic Postgres as we would be doing. So there may be a benefit not in particularly moving errors as a feature, but rather introducing timescale DB as an additional database to which we slowly migrate data, like we put new features that would really benefit, but we would not have touched existing big database or big CI database, but rather have another data store that we can use much more efficiently. It's much better suited to what you're actually, I think, describing.
yeah, no, and I agree. That's exactly I think what we're doing, and I actually want to get you and some other folks kind of more involved in reviewing this stuff soon, because it's starting to kind of get some momentum. But basically, ClickHouse is the data store that we're looking at kind of kind of actively developing on top of for the Opstrace stuff. It kind of came out. There's a lot I could go into why, but basically ClickHouse, it's a columnar database out of Yandex. It's very performant in certain ways. It's like clustered, and the plan is for that to be the backend for logs, traces, which actually kind of works today. There's a demo of that, and then maybe metrics and errors, because apparently that's what Sentry uses as well, I've learned. So it's kind of a more, if you had like large observability data, I think that's the direction I guess we're going in. So yeah, it'd be good to get more kind of eyes and input on that.
Are you working with anyone in infra? You should engage these people as soon as possible, because like I'm all in favor of solving that problem that way, but now we're now talking about supporting this new thing and having to learn about it. And we learned with Elastic. Managing Elastic is not easy, right? So if we're introducing some new beats into the environment and thinking about it, the earlier you get in for people to start thinking about this and be informed and maybe send some people to training, the better. Like if the later we involve infrastructure, the longer we're going to push back and say, we don't know anything about this.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, we're like a few weeks into this, so I'd say, at this point there is a write-up that like that team has reviewed, like that they wrote last week, in terms of like this is the kind of proposed SaaS infrastructure. And I think, Steve's been kind of aware of this, but yeah, we need to get more screws. So we're kind of at that point now. Yeah, exactly. And the plan is not to like dump this on infrastructure immediately. Like the idea is that there's.
No, I know, but I mean, I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
the earlier you get an SRE to at least start thinking about this, the earlier we understand. It's not about the provisioning. It's just when this breaks, what do we do?
Yeah. We'll be talking about like data volume too, which is like, even if it's a really good technology for it, it's going to be, challenging to maintain at scale. So yeah, we'll start that conversation now. So I'll add some links to the end of the agenda after the meeting here, and we can talk about it next week, or I'll kind of try to loop you, Camille, and Stan, folks into that, actively discussing how to do that.
Cool. We are at the time. Good discussion. Thank you for hijacking this meeting for your staff, Sam. Good. That's exactly this meeting is for, synchronization between the groups. So great, everyone. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.